Exciting day. The Cheapfinder is back on the road.
Change the starter on a Nissan Pathfinder.
This is first try on the start. This thing since like March last year. Boys, that means it's time for some Cheapfinding. Woo! So this right here, what we call a little bit of West Coast pinstriping. Ah, yeah. Lunch with a view, boys. Yeah! Never let a good puddle go to waste. Well, we just had some warning lights on. What up, guys? Brady from Pathmaker Productions. Out in the driveway today. The reason I'm going to film this on the Cheapfinder project is I hear all the time people complaining about how difficult it is to change a starter on a Nissan Pathfinder with a VG30. It's not that hard if you know what you're doing. Since I'm not exactly known for my great plans, I figured, why not today be the day that I actually put the starter in this stupid thing. Gone literally nowhere in 8 months. It was parked right where we're standing, and I pushed it over there one day with my rig when I had to do some snow plowing. That's as far as it's gone in almost a year. I threw those 34-inch Super Swampers on it in the last video. We're fully on the bump stops. We're just touching there. So where I trimmed in the front, looks like it's gonna be good enough. And then it died. Since then, I've welded the rear in it. It's not that pretty. But hey, I'm never here to win beauty contests. I'm just here to do some wheeling. That's never coming apart. Which reminds me, I don't think I put any diff fluid in it. I should probably check that. Let's pull out the shovel, dig all the snow off of this stupid thing, and throw the starter in. Oh, I'm gonna break my shovel. So for those of you who've done this before, will know the problem with these things and why they're so damn hard. The starter is down there underneath the oil filter. Why the starters die? Well, every time you change the oil, you dump a little bit of oil on the starter. That makes them very hard to get at. You can't do it from above, so you have to do it from underneath. And it's awkward to reach in there. This is time for cardboard. Got to keep those big pieces around. A lifesaver at a time like this. A few things to note. The skid plate, 10 mil bolts. Haven't got a 10 mil socket out here yet, so I'm digging it off. The starter bolts are actually the bell housing bolts, and they come in from the back side, and there's two of them, and they're both 14 mil. If you're trying to snake a wrench in from the front, nah. Two from the back. The exhaust, of course, is in the way of the upper bolt. It's actually a 14 mil shallow socket with an extension or two. Got the two bolts off. Starter's loose in there. It's greasy. That's probably what killed it. Let's see if we can get it out here. So now we just twist, pull it out the front. Like I said, a couple of twists. As you can see, that old bad boy is quite greasy. Typical fashion. Here I am, weeks later. As obviously I can't even hide because there's no snow on the ground. It's so greasy. It's so greasy. At least I'm not laying in a snowbank. So let's see if we can figure out what's wrong with this starter and see if we can repair it on the cheap. Good enough that we can put it back in the Cheapfinder and keep going. We're gonna get out the jumper cables. Jump up off the Pathmaker because I got a battery that works in that thing, and we'll see about the Bindex, and we'll see if the starter actually wants to spin. If you've never bench tested a starter before, I need to start with another battery. So we got the ground to the case, and then we've got the hot lead to the post, this post on the solenoid, and then we have to excite this wire. I happen to have small chunk of wire with an alligator clip and So, my Bendex is coming out nice and hard, which is great, but it's not spinning, which means my brushes are most likely fouled. As you can see how gross this thing is, not a huge surprise. But now let's pull this cover off and let's take a look at the brushes. We'll see if we can clean them up. Are taking off these two screws here, and they're big long ones, and we'll take those off and then we'll slide the body out. Sometimes you take things apart and you don't know what's wrong with them. Sometimes you take things apart and it's very clear what the problem was. As you can see, this this starter was absolutely full of oily schmeg, and then it turned into rusty water. So I'm assuming this is my problem right here as to why the starter wouldn't spin. Big surprise. The brushes look extremely gross and rusty as well down in here. I have no idea how to take those out. Probably take this out. I don't know. We'll keep learning. Find out. Clean it up in my kind of half-ass fashion. It's not perfect. When I opened it, I couldn't even spin it. Now I can. I think in proper Cheapfinder fashion, I think it's good enough that I'm going to put it back together and see if I can actually get it to spin now. Because if it is, it's good enough for me. Doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to start the old hunk of junk. Whoa! You see that? So I know when I started the Cheapfinder project, I said, oh, I'm not going to buy any new parts and, you know, we're going to just use junkyard stuff. But, well, here it is a year later and the thing's still not running. And the two junkyard starters I have still are not working. So really, it's time to stop messing around. And it was time to buy a brand new starter. Thanks, Rock Auto. Let's throw this thing in and get that damn Cheapfinder started for the first time in a year. Before I put down the tarp and cover it up, let's all get a look at the actual flowing water that's running underneath this rig that I'm just about to lay down under. Oh, I really love that I can't put the starter in from above. Stupid guy. Let's give you some actual information. So there's actually a bit of use for this video for whoever has made it this far through here. So if you're going to take your starter out because you have a Nissan Pathfinder and it eats starters, it's quite simple. Step one, take your damn battery cable off. Because if you don't, you're going to get a cool light show and you're going to let the smoke out. Ask me how I know. So once you undo your battery, you take the skid plate, squirrel, up the front. Then you should be able to reach yourself up into the starter. At that point, you need a 14mm socket. You come through from the back side, and one of them, the lower one's pretty easy to see. The upper one, you're going to need a long extension so you can feed it past the exhaust. You take those two bolts out, the starter should be loose. At that point, reach in where the belly pan was from the front and pull it towards you. The electrical cable is going to get snagged on everything, and then you're going to need to get out the 12mm wrench and take the electrical connection off. And this is where, if you left the battery hooked up, you're going to make a big spark show and you're going to hate your life. And then you just twist and pull it out. Sounds really simple. It's not. You're going to hate it, but you will be able to get it out above the steering linkage. And then you'll have it on the bench. It's really actually quite easy, but it's like an idiot brain twister. On that note, let me climb into this river and get this damn starter back in and flash this thing up. Didn't even get wet somehow. Tarp for the win. Toss the battery back in. And no cheating. This is first try on the start. This thing since like March last year. Ah, yes, boys. That means it's time for some Cheapfinding. Whew, she's running rough. Guess that's what you get when your gas is a year old. Sick! Man, now that I got this thing started,
I've been holding off. We're gonna give it a couple inches of lift, and we're gonna put a steering stabilizer on the front, and then we're gonna wheel the hell out of this thing. So, stay tuned. More Cheapfinder action is coming because we finally have this old piece of junk running. Gonna let this old stinker get up to temps here. I gotta throw some gear oil in the rear diff after welding it. So if you haven't checked out that video and you want to know how to weld the diff on your Nissan Pathfinder, I'll put a link in the somewhere up here. Go check that out. But let's throw some fluid in this thing and let's go wheeling. I don't know why I show you guys when I'm doing super sketchy, but hey, I do have one jack stand under there. Safety second around here. Let's do a few more pumps, fill this rear end full of gear oil, and then I won't blow it up as soon as I drive it. So we got the Cheapfinder running the other day for the first time in almost a year. And well, you know me, I gotta take it out and test it. So we're out doing a little overlanding today. So what better way to test it than taking her for a little rip on a couple of roads. Now, normally I drive down these roads with 42-inch tires and all sorts of fancy jazz. So this is already a bit of a different experience with only 34s. Woo! We of course have the welded rear end in this thing. And the 34-inch tires on it, Super Swamper TSLs, 1997. And this thing is working great. I got a decent shimmy in the steering wheel, so I think our next project is gonna have to be an idler arm brace, which we can do on the Super Cheap, and it will really help your Nissan steering last a lot longer if you've got a Nissan Pathfinder with a little bit bigger tires. But check that out in the next video. We're gonna head to the top of the hill here, go for a little lookout action, have a gander while I have some lunch. And I also have to try hard not to drive it like the Pathfinder, because, well, it's really easy to forget that this thing is fragile. Woo! So this right here, what we call a little bit of West Coast pinstriping. If you're a bit of a G-pull, you're gonna get out, you're gonna cut those, but ain't nobody got time for that. So I wear my scratches with pride. Woo! Send it, Barb. Send it. Oh, she smells a little burny. Ah, yeah. Lunch with a view, boys. Well, the old Cheapfinder doing great on the trip up the hill there. I can hear some steaming sounds. I don't even really want to open the hood. And this right here is what it's all about. This is why I picked up the Project Cheapfinder, because well, I drove this thing on the road here and I drove it up here, which I can't say the same about the Pathmaker rig. That one needs to be on the trailer. But for $1,000 US, about $1,300 Canadian, I'm into this 1995 Nissan Pathfinder, and bought it for 800 bucks, put $400 of the tires on it. Had to actually buy a brand new starter, which this is never fun, buying brand new parts, but considering that together has got me up here for lunch, well, certainly can't complain. Figured I'd let you boys soak in a little bit of the view. And now
Would love to tell you guys all what we're looking at out there, but well, as they say, first rule of Fight Club. So just enjoy the view, because where we are doesn't really matter. Also, I'm not sure if the camera will pick it up, but when we were out here the other day, one of my buddies who's a hunter was talking about the ooh, 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 ooh sound that I hear in the background. He told me it was something scary, like it's a bear or something that's not happy with me right now. Am I worried? Nah. Should I know what it is? Probably. So if anybody in here is a hunter and knows what kind of sounds like, it's definitely not an owl. It's deeper. Either way, I think I pissed off some large creature while having lunch. Before we go, gotta flex that bad boy out. Okay, I thought I had road pressure today in my tires. Apparently they're a little bit soft. Look at that clearance. 34-inch tires, gents. Bone stock in terms of lift. Lots of clearance. We're a little tight right there. Yeah, look at that tuck right there. Oh, look at that. Oh, so nice. Let's tuck her in there. You can probably figure out what that sound is. Also a note, I wouldn't do this, even though I haven't done much hard or any real wheeling today. I don't even know if I would do this in an open diff truck, because it's really easy to get stuck when doing things like turnarounds up the top there if you're open. But as soon as you have that rear end welded, it's amazing what you can climb up. Also, it's a lot more fun to drive on roads like this because, well, it's just drift racer all the time. Whoa! Woo! Almost put her up the road there. The steering in this thing is not nearly as precise as the Pathmaker, but that's why we're gonna go fab up an idler arm brace right now. So let's head her back to the house. Look, someone was spinning their tires all the way up the hill. I don't know who did that. Woo! Yeah! Oh, I love a good puddle. Never let a good puddle go to waste. Had some warning lights on. Oh, battery light. That's not good. Maybe I should stop hitting the puddle so hard. But I think the problem is too much full send through the big puddles, which really sucks because I was going to set up a tripod and hit one really good for you guys, but well, I think what's going on when I hit these big puddles, I didn't put the skid plate back on, and I think I'm just soaking the alternator, and it is unhappy with me. So yeah, you can see my battery lights on there, which means my alternator's not putting out at all, which is a bad sign. So hopefully we can get this thing home and I didn't toast the alt. Note to self, don't go through big huge puddles without the skid plate on. Definitely getting some terrible sounds from under the hood. Which reminds me, because the next adventure, after we throw the idler arm brace in this thing, is multiple hundred of kilometers with a ferry ride, and we're gonna do some overlanding to get to some of the most extreme rock crawling you're ever gonna see over on the mainland. So I hope this thing survives, because well, it's got to get me a long way from home. Get me back home. But hey, I've never been accused of being all that smart. So let's just send it, and we're gonna hope for the best. Well, I'm back at the house, so I'll be real quick, wrap this up. But I found out what the terrible sound was, and also why I was getting the battery light coming down the hill. Don't know what caused it, But, well, my alternator belt has about 3 inches of slop in it.
So that would count for the ridiculous sound and the battery light coming on. So better tighten that up. But anyways, we'll get working on the idler arm brace next. Tune in. Cheers.